Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. Bhadravanapi Manuna Yathavad Upatalpita Pachitihi Priyavrata Naradayor Avismam Abhit Samit Samanayor Atmasam Avasthanam Avanmasam Sayam avyavritam pravartayannamadat. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma was then worshipped by Manu, who respectfully satisfied him as well as he could. Priyavrata and Narada also looked upon Brahma with no tinge of resentment. Having enraged Priyavrata in accepting his father's request, Lord Brahma returned to his abode, Satyalok, which is indescribable by the endeavor of mundane mind or words. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Manu was certainly very satisfied that Lord Brahma had persuaded his son Priyavrata to take the responsibility for ruling the world. Priyavrata and Narada were also very satisfied. Although Brahma had forced Priyavrata to accept the management of worldly affairs, thus breaking his vow to remain brahmachari and completely engaged in devotional service, Narada and Priyavrata did not look upon Brahma with resentment. Narada was not at all sorry that he had been frustrated in making Priyavrata a disciple. Both Priyavrata and Narada were exalted personalities who knew how to respect Lord Brahma. Therefore, instead of looking upon Brahma with resentment, they very willingly offered him their respect. Lord Brahma then returned to his celestial abode known as Satyalok, which is described here as being impenetrable and being unapproachable by words. It is stated in this verse that Lord Brahma returned to his residence, which is as important as his own personality. Lord Brahma is the creator of this universe and the most exalted personality within it. His lifetime is described in Bhagavad Gita, Sahasra Yudha Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu. The total duration of the 4 Yudhas is 4,300,000 years. 4,300,000 years. And when that is multiplied 1,000 times, it equals 12 hours in the life of Brahma. Therefore, we cannot factually comprehend even 12 hours of Brahma's life, to say nothing of the 100 years that constitute his entire lifetime. How then can we understand his abode? The Vedic literatures describe that in Satyaloka there is no birth, death, old age or disease. In other words, since Satyalok is situated next to Brahmalok or the Brahman effulgence, it is almost as good as Vaikuntha-loka. Lord Brahma's abode is practically indescribable from our present status. Therefore, it has been described as Avan Manasa Gochara, or beyond the description of our words and the imagination of our minds. The Vedic literatures thus describe the abode of Lord Brahma, Yadvai Parartyam Tad Upa Ramestayam Nayatra Sotro Najara Na Mrityur Nartir Chodve Raha. In Satyalok, which is situated many billions and billions of years away, there is no lamentation, nor is there old age, death, anxiety, or the influence of enemies. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta Purport.
It's part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter called The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And in today's verse, we are seeing how Narada and Priyavrata are responding to what has happened. Narada was instructing Priyavrata in devotional service in the beautiful settings of the Gandhamadana hills. Nice breeze, beautiful valleys, clear lakes, most conducive for spiritual life. Priyavrata, although a prince, he has come away from the palace and he is in the midst of this beautiful setting and instructed by none other than Narada. And so very happily, he is away from the materialistic world, kingship, kingdom, rulers, citizens, and all such hassles. And at that time, his father comes and tells him that your brother has passed away, and so you must become the king. And Priyavrata was not very happy to hear his father's request. And then all of a sudden, not just his father, his grandfather, who is Lord Brahma himself, appeared there and gave him certain instructions and persuaded him that he must return to the kingdom and become a king and take over the kingship and the management of the world. So much different from the peaceful life that he is having in the beautiful valleys of Gandhamadana. And he was persuaded, and when Lord Brahma himself is saying all this, he cannot say no. And Lord Brahma had wonderful arguments to say that why he should not fear becoming a king and a ruler, even if he wants to pursue spiritual life. And hearing all those instructions, Priyavrata agreed. And now in this verse today we are seeing Bhagavan api manuna. Brahma is referred to as Bhagavan here. So Vedic literatures, we have to have the help of the acharyas to understand them. Otherwise we will be confused. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is described as Bhagavan, and here Brahma is described as Bhagavan. Who is Bhagavan? Is Krishna and Brahma one and the same? Are they different? All kinds of confusions may come. But in the Vedic culture, this knowledge is heard in parampara, heard from the spiritual master, and also in reference to the various acharyas' descriptions. So there won't be any confusion. So here Bhagavan refers to a powerful being, and Lord Brahma is a very powerful being. He's the creator of the whole universe. The stars and the galaxies and the planets that we see in the universe is all his handiwork. So how powerful he is. So Bhagavan api manuna yathavat upakalpita apachitihi. And Manu, he apachitihi, he offered worship, respect, upakalpitaha, as much as he could offer in those circumstances, and yathavat, as deserved by Lord Brahma, and At that time, Priyavrata and Narada avishamam. They were abhisamikshamanaha. They were looking upon, they were watching. And they had no vishama, avishamam. They had no ill feelings, they had no resentment, without any aversion. Atmasam avasthanam. And Lord Brahma returned to his avasthanam, his abode. Atmasam avasthanam. An abode just suitable for his position. Lord Brahma, which is avak manasam. Vak is words. That which can be described by words is vak. And manasam is as which can be conceived by the mind. But his atmasam avasthanam is avak manasam. It is something, Brahma's abode cannot be described by words, cannot be conceived by the mind. And to such Kshayam, his own planet, Avyavahritam, to such an extraordinary planet, Pravarthayan Agamat, he departed and he returned. Lord Brahma was then worshipped by Manu. Manuna yathavat upakalpita apachitihi. Respectfully satisfied him as well as he could. Upakalpita yathavat upakalpita apachitihi. Priyavrata and Narada also looked upon Brahma. Abhisamikshamanayo. Priyavrata Naradaha. Naradayor abhisamikshamanayaha. Manayo. With no tinges of resentment. Avishamam. Having engaged Priyavrata in accepting his father's request, Lord Brahma returned to his abode, Pravartayan Agamat, Satyaloka, which is indescribable by the endeavor of mundane mind or words. Avak Manasam Kshayam. So, in the purport, we see some very important points Prabhupada highlighting. The situation normally in the material world, when something like this happens and someone's direction is overruled by someone else, it would agitate people's mind. So Prabhupada is pointing out here, Narada and Priyavrata, being exalted personalities, they were not ordinary persons. And when Narada's instruction to Priyavrata to renounce the world was turned down by Priyavrata under the order of Brahma and Manu, Priyavrata did not have any ill feelings, without any without any tinge of resentment. This is a very beautiful pastime, bringing out the wonderful character of great personalities, and how, unless one has such wonderful qualities, one cannot return to the spiritual world. One cannot be an associate of the Lord. One cannot be a resident of the spiritual world. Because in the spiritual world, there are persons, personalities, and how we relate, always free from any such resentment and ill feeling. That is the dominant feature in the spiritual world. Just like envy, jealousy, resentment is the dominant feature of the material world. This is the contrast. That is why when Srimad Bhagavatam sets out in the very second verse of the Bhagavatam, Dharma projita kaita votram paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam, and so on. This Bhagavatam sets forth to establish what is the spiritual reality. And this Bhagavatam sets forth that religious principle which is free from any compromise. Dharma projita kaita votram. And then in Bhagavatam says, who can actually follow this? Who can actually understand this? Who can actually accept this? Paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Parama nirmatsaranam satam. Satam, devotees who are nirmatsara. And very nicely Prabhupada translates this word as 100% pure in the heart. Just see. So, Srimad Bhagavatam principles can be understood, can be appreciated by those who are 100% pure in the heart, or those who have an aspiration to achieve that kind of a state of consciousness, willing to give up the material contaminations that are found in this material world. And so here we see Priyavrata and Narada, they are not at all perturbed, because behind the instruction of Narada to Priyavrata that you must renounce the world and you must engage in devotional service, by engaging in devotional service, I want you to please the Lord. And behind the instruction of Lord Brahma and Manu to go and become a king and accept the responsibility of ruling the material world, so that in that way you can render devotional service and you can please the Lord. So you can see ultimately Narada's instruction and Brahma's instruction, Manu's instruction were all to please the Lord. Maybe there is one way of pleasing the Lord, there is another way of pleasing the Lord. In fact, there are unlimited ways of pleasing the Lord, and the Lord enjoys unlimited kinds of services rendered by His devotees. Prabhupada often used one expression, Krishna is not stuck up with only one kind of enjoyment. In fact, that is the meaning of Krishna, who is the supreme enjoyer. He has unlimited capacity to enjoy unlimited ways of the unlimited services offered by the devotees. It's not just one single kind of a thing. So because Narada and Priyavrata are also intending to please the Lord, and Brahma has given an alternate way of pleasing the Lord, ultimately it is for pleasing the Lord, and Narada and Priyavrata had no tinge of resentment. So this is the converging, unifying factor in the spiritual world, because everyone wants to please Krishna. The contrasting feature in the material world is that each one of us, a unit of consciousness, a personality, an amsha of Krishna, trying to become the enjoyer, and hence there is competition and jealousy and envy, all of that. So it's a spiritual world, spiritual dimension, and spiritual consciousness is of another kind, very different from this material world. So all of these instructions are to help us that how in all our actions the dominating feature should be how I am pleasing Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada created this institution, and he wanted us to act and function and serve him and his mission through his institutional framework. Prabhupada saw an institution is a modern world construct. It's a new idea. For instance, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was preaching 500 years ago, there were no such ideas of institution. There were simple institutions, we may say, but it was in a very simplified form. There would be a teacher, they would have some disciples, they would be teaching, and it was a different kind of a world. But in the 20th and the 21st century, things have changed and new ideas have emerged, and institution and organization is another very common feature in the modern world. And people have organized in the form of institution, education to be perpetuated, businesses to be perpetuated, even governments to be formed. So in all kinds of human endeavor, they have found an institution as a mechanism by which that purpose and that mission and that particular objective can be perpetuated in this world. And so our acharyas felt that the Lord's mission can also be perpetuated through an institutional framework. And it gives us an opportunity for all of us to be together. But there is the danger that when there is an institution, when there is a group of people, there is a possibility of some kind of a politics coming between each other. And then even in any institution, there is leadership and there is hierarchy of leadership, and someone can be thinking that I must become a big leader, I must become a bigger leader, and then it can bring that kind of a contamination. And Srila Prabhupada was very conscious of it. And Prabhupada spoke a few times on that. I will read this and you will see what was Srila Prabhupada's thinking on these things. This is what Prabhupada spoke in a morning walk in Vrindavan in March 1974. For Vaishnava, there is no suffering personally, but he is very much anxious. How these rascals will be happy, that is his business. These rascals are misled. They are going astray, unhappy. So how they should be happy? So that is Vaishnava's business. So the Vaishnava, therefore, will have no politics. Politics means planning for one's own happiness. That is politics. So in our society, there should be no diplomacy, no politics. Everyone should be eager how to do good to others. That is Vaishnava. If he is planning something, that I shall be leader, I shall be doing something, that is not Vaishnavism. That politics is not good. So this was the wish of Srila Prabhupada. In our society, there should be no diplomacy, no politics. This can happen if the devotees are sincerely trying that I must become pure. And as Prabhupada has said in the next sentence, everyone should be eager how to do good to others. Not thinking of one's own pleasure, one's own enjoyment, but thinking of others' good. And as Prabhupada began in the beginning, if one is surcharged with the thought that there is an important mission in this world, my Guru's mission, Krishna's mission, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, If that mission, I must serve in that mission. And I must not be thinking something for aggrandizing something for myself. If that thought is dominant, that's a very powerful thing which will help us rise above our individual selfish desires and selfish motives. Another occasion, during a talk very early in the movement in 1970, this was the first time Srila Prabhupada had introduced in the temple singing of the Narsimha prayers, and he had spoken about it. And there he said, and Satho Vrittehe, dealing very straightforward. Sataha, Satha, Sat means like a devotee. Satho Vritte. And Satho Vritte, dealing very straightforward. No diplomacy, no politics, no duplicity. That will not help. Satho Vritte. Vritti means profession. His profession should be very straightforward. No underhand dealings. Satho Vritte. So, that's what happens in the material world. They compete with each other, they get into some kind of an underhand dealings to topple someone else, to pull someone else down. And Prabhupada wanted our institution to be free from such things, because we are all sadhus. Our vrittis should be Satho Vrittehe. Once again, in a letter, someone had written to Prabhupada that there is fighting and there is politics in the temple. And so Prabhupada is replying in 1972 in a letter. You mentioned there is fighting and making politics in the temple, but that is your previous qualification. That means you could not give up your qualification. You or anyone. So you should be careful not to revive your old qualifications. It is the business of the temple president to check it. If such things are happening, it should be brought to the notice of the president. How I can judge from here? It may be you who are fighting and making politics. It may be you who is wrong. It is up to the president to judge. But we must always be enthusiastic to serve. That's a fact. So much so that we will gradually reduce eating and sleeping and save time for Krishna's service. So you can see here again, Prabhupada is saying there should be no politics in our institution. And Prabhupada is warning, we have our own contaminations in the past, and with that contaminated mind and heart we come into this world, and once again we can start manifesting those contaminations. So Prabhupada wants us to be watchful, and Prabhupada is also saying it is a duty of the temple president. So it's the leader's responsibility to see that no such politics is going on in the institution. It's a very big task. It's a very big responsibility. And each one of us have a role to play. If we are all full of such feelings and selfish ideas and selfish motives, we could be manipulating things around us. That's not very desirable. And then, this was a very interesting quote, last one, May 27th, 1977 in Vrindavan. So May 27, you can imagine, the last year that Srila Prabhupada was manifest in this world. Prabhupada, we have no other business. We want to see people live, eating very nicely nutritious food, keeping good health, but unnecessary artificial things bothering, that we don't want. Keep your health very nice. Live for as many years as possible and be Krishna conscious. Then next life you go back to home, back to Godhead, permanent life. Yet gatva na nivartante. This we want to give. There is no cheating. There is no politics. No personal ambition fulfilling. This is our mission. There is no politics, no personal ambition fulfilling. This is our mission. Try to convince them. There is not a little tinge of personal sense gratification. Now you can point out any of them. Here is the point, the personal sense gratification. We are talking among ourselves. So if there is any flaw, you can point out. Can anyone? That here is the point, personal sense gratification. There is no such things in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada wanted it to be, our institution and our conduct should be such that nobody can even point out that there is some personal sense gratification going on. We should be like that. This was the desire of Srila Prabhupada. Just see. There is no such thing in Krishna consciousness. Here is the point. Personal sense gratification. There is no such thing in Krishna consciousness. Tandere charana se bhakta sanevas. Our only ambition is we live among the devotees and execute the mission of our predecessors, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna. This is our ambition. Tandere charana se bhakta sanevas, janme hoy ei abhilash. We have got ambition, but this is our ambition, that live with devotees and execute the mission of our predecessor. This is our aim. So we have to live with devotees, but our mission must be how to carry out the mission and our ambition should be how to carry out the mission of our predecessors. So this is the dominant thing that happens even in the hearts of Priyavrata, Narada, all of them. There is one other very interesting pastime. This was in the month of October 1977 in Vrindavan. So you can imagine, November 14th, Srila Prabhupada passed away. So this was in the month of October. And Prabhupada was very weak. He was always on the bed. And we have seen those videos where Prabhupada devotees would be chanting and they would be taking turns to massage him. The Ayurvedic doctor had told that he should be massaged so that there will be circulation of blood. And Prabhupada was not eating. He was extremely weak, rarely speaking. So once, somewhere at midnight, Prabhupada sent word for one of his senior sannyasi leaders of the movement at that time. And he called for that. So this devotee ran up to that sannyasi and said, Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada is calling. So those days, knowing Prabhupada's health and condition, everyone, there was a kind of a anxiety in the hearts of devotees. What will happen to Srila Prabhupada? And this devotee came running. What's happened to Prabhupada? Will Prabhupada say something? Will that be his last words? Oh, what is that? So he came rushing. And then Prabhupada was lying on the bed. And then he came and said, Srila Prabhupada, I heard you called for me. And then Prabhupada slowly opened his eyes. And he was lying. And slowly, one by one word, Prabhupada spoke. He said, do you think this movement will go on after I am gone? This was the concern of Srila Prabhupada. At somewhere at midnight, he's remembering, he's calling one of his leaders and he's asking this question. Do you think this movement will go on after I am gone? Slowly, very softly, one by one the word came and the devotee was waiting to hear. This Maharaj was waiting to hear. And then he said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, if we are sincere, if we chant 16 rounds and follow the regulatory principles and all the instructions you have given, certainly this movement will go on. And then Prabhupada heard, paused, And then once again he started speaking. He was very weak. Just then Prabhupada said, intelligence and organization. Then Prabhupada became silent. In other words, Prabhupada was adding, yes, you must chant, you must be sincere, you must follow regulatory principles, you must follow the instructions I have given, and you also have to be intelligent, and you also have an important feature is the organization, and to be organized in fulfilling the mission of Srila Prabhupada. So, acting intelligently, not foolishly. This is an important aspect. There was once, in the very early days, in 1967, Prabhupada had talked about printing books and printing a magazine. First time he told them to print a magazine, and they got a few things, and then they didn't have much money, and the printer put the magazine together, and then they bound it. All devotees only did the stapling and sticking with glue and all of those things, and then they brought the magazine to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada looked at the magazine, he flipped through, and all those pages which were stuck, and it all fell apart and it fell down. And devotees were embarrassed. They gathered all the books, pages, and then said, Srila Prabhupada, we are not very sincere, and that's why it has happened. Like they were feeling very bad. So Prabhupada said, no, not sincere, not that you are not sincere, you are not intelligent. So, you see how Srila Prabhupada wanted us to work intelligently, work with intelligence, not be stupid. And the organization, the institution that Srila Prabhupada has created. So, these are all the important desires of Srila Prabhupada, that we work as an institution, because, and when we work in this way, there is immense opportunity to learn, to rise above our selfish desires and our own ambitions for our own success and such things, and bring focus on what will please Guru and Krishna. So that it's a wonderful opportunity to cultivate this consciousness, and these are all wonderful examples to show that how there should be no resentment among devotees in some decision making, in some way how to do a certain thing. Different kinds of ideas may come, and in a very structured, organized manner, we must function as an institution functions, and that will be pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna.